Hello everyone. This channel is dedicated to those who may have less time or fewer opportunities to understand the context of world developments. Through stories and conversations, we aim to explain the evolution of the world and current events, hoping you'll enjoy our content. Today, we'll use a short story to explore the development of mobile phones. After the story, we'll also include a brief summary of mobile phone advancements. We hope you'll find it engaging. On a bright afternoon with blue skies and white clouds, Jack's family gathered in the backyard for a barbecue. The aroma from the grill filled the air as chicken wings and sausages sizzled over the charcoal. Children ran and played on the lawn while the adults sipped cold beer, sharing the latest news and cracking jokes, creating a warm and joyful atmosphere.
"I'll grab some drinks."
Jack said with a smile, setting down the tongs he was holding and dusting off his apron. Humming a tune, he turned and walked into the kitchen. As he opened the fridge to grab some sodas, a curious voice called from behind him.
"Uncle, is this a Nokia 3310?
Jack paused, turned around, and saw his nephew Kevin crouched in front of a wooden cabinet in the kitchen corner. Kevin's bright eyes were fixed on an old phone inside, his fingers lightly tapping on the glass door of the cabinet as if verifying a precious artifact.
I've never seen one in person, but I heard it's indestructible and can even crack walnuts."
Kevin said excitedly, a sly grin spreading across his face.
"But this one looks way too new to be real. Is it a fake?"
Jack chuckled, put down the sodas, and walked over to the cabinet, raising an eyebrow as he looked.
"Hey, good eye, kid. You're spot on. This is actually a replica, and yes, it's fake."
He laughed, opened the cabinet, and took out the phone, giving it a little shake in his hand.
Fake?
Kevin said, surprised, before bursting into laughter.
Who would make a fake Nokia 3310?
"Oh, there's a story behind this one."
Jack said with a mysterious smile.
A friend of mine once saw an ad on Facebook claiming it was an original reissue of the Nokia 3310. The flashy promotional language caught his attention, and he impulsively placed an order. But when it arrived, he realized the materials were cheap, and the functions didn't match up. It was a complete joke.
Kevin smirked.
I bet your friend was pretty mad.
Mad? Sure, but there wasn't much he could do. He took it as a lesson learned. Later, he gave the phone to me as a gag gift.
Jack laughed heartily before reaching deeper into the cabinet and pulling out another phone. A genuine Nokia 3310, slightly worn but still solid.
"Now this is the real Nokia 3310.
He said proudly, handing it to Kevin.
The classic model from 2000. Not only was it tough as nails, but it also completely changed how we used phones. Its battery could last a whole week. Nothing could beat it back then."
Kevin carefully held the phone, weighing it in his hand.
It's got some heft to it.
He remarked, then looked up at Jack.
Can it really survive a fall?
Absolutely.
Jack grinned, pointing at the phone in Kevin's hand.
I remember a friend once dropped this thing from a third-floor window. The screen got a small scratch, but it still worked like a charm. But my favorite thing about it was the classic game, Snake.
Snake?
Kevin frowned.
Sounds kind of old-fashioned.
Old-fashioned?
Jack pretended to be offended.
That was the game of the time. The coolest kids in school were judged by who could break the record. Back then, I was the Snake King of my class.
Kevin burst out laughing.
Uncle, don't tell me you still remember your high score.
How could I forget? 2,700 points. Took me several late nights to get that record.
Jack thumped his chest with pride. Kevin studied the phone closely and glanced back at the other devices in the cabinet.
Uncle, you've got so many other phones in here. Do they all have stories too?
Jack smiled faintly and gently opened the glass door of the cabinet.
Oh, there are plenty of stories. Each of these phones has witnessed a different era.
Carefully, he took out a bulky Motorola Dynasty from the bottom shelf, holding it in both hands as he handed it to Kevin.
Wow, this is huge.
Kevin exclaimed, his eyes widening in amazement as he examined the phone.
What era is this from?
The 1980s. This is the Motorola Dynasty.
Jack said with a hint of pride in his voice.
It was the world's first commercially available mobile phone, nicknamed the brick phone. Back then, only big bosses or celebrities could afford one. Carrying this around was like wearing a gold medal. purely for show.
Kevin tried to hold it in one hand but frowned at its weight.
Geez, this thing's heavier than my tablet. And it's so big. How did people carry it around?
Jack couldn't help but laugh.
Carry it? It may be heavy, but back then, it was a status symbol. Walking down the street talking on one of these would turn every head.
He gave Kevin a playful pat on the shoulder and asked,
Have you ever seen the movie Wall Street?
No, I haven't. Is it in that movie?
Kevin asked curiously.
Of course.
Jack nodded, a nostalgic gleam in his eye.
In the movie, the stockbroker character carries this exact model while strutting down the street in a suit, giving orders over the phone. It was the ultimate image of success.
Kevin chuckled and examined the clunky phone more closely.
How long did the battery last back then? Did people have to use it plugged in?
Haha, well, it wasn't far off.
Jack nodded, placing the Dynity back into the cabinet. He then pulled out a sleeker Motorola StarTAC and flipped it open with a gentle snap.
But by the 1990s, phones became much more portable. Look at this, Motorola's StarTAC, a flip phone design, and one of the most fashionable models of its time.
Kevin's eyes lit up.
This looks way better than the brick phone. I think I've seen phones like this in old movies.
Exactly.
Jack mimicked a secret agent, flipping the phone open and lowering his voice dramatically.
Mission accomplished.
He burst out laughing.
Back then, flip phones were the coolest thing. Pull one out, snap it open, and you'd be the center of attention.
Kevin eagerly imitated Jack's movements, flipping the phone open himself.
This really does feel cool, way better than just swiping on a modern phone. What did people mostly use phones for back then?
Well, aside from making calls, text messaging was becoming a big thing, especially among young people.
Jack said with a smile.
You know, texting was how we dated back in the day.
Dated.
Kevin's eyes lit up.
How did people confess their feelings? Did they just text, "You're so pretty"?
Jack burst into laughter.
No. Too straightforward. The classic line back then was, "Have you eaten yet?" It was simple and subtle, but it made hearts race. If they replied, "Not yet," you knew your chance had come.
Kevin laughed so hard he nearly fell over.
Uncle, I can't believe you were that romantic back then.
Of course I was. How else do you think I won over your aunt?
Jack said proudly, tilting his chin up. He then picked up the Nokia 3310 again and added,
Oh, speaking of this fake replica, there's actually another story behind it.
What story?
Kevin asked, full of curiosity.
A friend of mine in Taiwan saw an ad one day on Facebook. It claimed this was an original reissue of the Nokia 3310 and that it was a limited release. He was so tempted that he placed an order right away. But when it arrived, he discovered it was completely fake.
Jack shook his head as he spoke.
To make matters worse, Taiwan had already shut down its 2G network at the time. So this phone was entirely useless, a complete decoration.
Kevin laughed until his sides hurt.
So what did your friend do with the phone?
Jack shrugged.
I happened to be on a business trip to Taiwan, so he gave it to me, saying it could at least serve as a collector's item. I thought it was a fun story and brought it back, hoping to share the tale with the next generation.
Kevin laughed and nodded.
That's actually a great idea.
His gaze then shifted to another simple-looking phone inside the cabinet.
Uncle, is that the first iPhone?
Just then, Jack's wife, Sarah, walked into the kitchen carrying a plate of freshly grilled meat. The enticing aroma followed her in as she wiped the sweat from her forehead and teased, "You two are having such a lively chat in here, but the meat outside is almost gone. I brought some in just for you, better refuel." Kevin eagerly grabbed a freshly grilled sausage and took a big bite, speaking with his mouth full.
Thanks, Auntie. We were just talking about the first iPhone. This phone looks way too stylish.
Sarah glanced at the phone in his hand, her lips curving into a smile, as if reminiscing about something. That's indeed a remarkable invention. But I have to remind you, your uncle wasn't so quick to embrace it back in the day. Kevin froze mid-bite and turned to Jack.
Uncle, what does she mean by that?
Caught off guard, Jack hesitated, but Sarah jumped in, her tone playful and teasing. When we first started dating, I had the original iPhone, while your uncle carried a BlackBerry. Remember that, Jack? You were so smug back then, saying things like, BlackBerry is the true tool for professionals. But all I saw was you straining your fingers every time you typed an email.
BlackBerry.
Kevin asked curiously.
What kind of phone is that?
With a wry smile, Jack rummaged through the cabinet and pulled out a small BlackBerry phone, holding it up for Kevin to see.
This is a BlackBerry. Back then, it was considered a must-have for business people. The physical keyboard made typing super convenient, and you could send and receive emails anytime, anywhere. We workaholics couldn't live without it.
Sarah chimed in. Not to mention, he used to brag about BlackBerry's messaging feature, saying it was faster than regular texting and much more secure. He acted like some kind of Wall Street tycoon.
That's because it was amazing.
Jack defended himself, laughing and shaking his head.
BlackBerry's instant messaging, BBM, was so secure you could even send confidential messages. Everyone in the office relied on it. I still remember the very first BBM I sent to you, Sarah.
Kevin's interest was piqued.
Uncle, what was it?
Before Jack could answer, Sarah burst into laughter and revealed it herself. It was just a lame joke followed by, I hope this breaks the ice. Kevin doubled over with laughter.
Uncle. That's such a cheesy opener.
Jack threw up his hands, feigning innocence.
But it worked, didn't it? Otherwise, how would your aunt be here today?
Sarah laughed and patted him on the shoulder. Fair enough, I'll give you that. But I still remember the look in your eyes when I pulled out my iPhone and used Safari to show you a restaurant menu. You were completely in awe. Jack laughed heartily and turned to Kevin.
That's married life for you. There's always someone to call you out on your grand stories.
Still chuckling, Kevin held up the BlackBerry and the first iPhone side by side.
Uncle, be honest, back then you must have thought the iPhone was better than the BlackBerry.
Jack shrugged and finally admitted.
Well, yeah. The touchscreen and App Store were so convenient that I couldn't resist for long. I switched to an iPhone soon after, though I still miss the feel of typing on a BlackBerry.
Sarah nodded smugly. See? I was the one who brought you into the touchscreen smartphone era. Kevin laughed so hard he nearly fell off his chair.
Auntie, are you saying Uncle lost to both technology and you back then?
Jack shook his head with a playful sigh.
I'll admit I lost to technology, but losing to your aunt was the best thing that ever happened to me.
He winked cheekily as he finished speaking. Sarah shook her head, smiling, and picked up the empty plate to leave. All right, you two keep chatting. I need to check on the barbecue and see if anything else needs flipping. After Sarah left, Kevin looked at the first iPhone in his hand and said thoughtfully,
Uncle, the iPhone really changed the world, didn't it?
Jack nodded, his tone growing serious.
It did. In 2007, the iPhone completely revolutionized the industry. It got rid of physical buttons, putting everything on a touchscreen, and introduced the concept of an app store. Phones were no longer just tools. They became a central part of our daily lives.
Kevin nodded thoughtfully.
No wonder everyone says Apple's innovation changed the world.
Jack patted Kevin on the shoulder, then reached into the cabinet again and pulled out a sleek, brand-new foldable phone. Placing it on the table, he gently unfolded it.
Take a look at this. This is cutting-edge technology today. A foldable screen phone. You can use it like a regular phone, but when you open it up, it turns into a small tablet. It's perfect for work and entertainment.
Kevin leaned in to examine it, his excitement clear.
Wow, this is so cool. The screen folds like this, it feels like something out of a sci-fi movie.
Exactly.
Jack said with a nod, his eyes reflecting a hint of nostalgia.
Just think about it. From the brick-like Big Brother phones to today's foldable smartphones, it's only been a few decades. The pace of technological development is incredible. Who knows? In the future, phones might not even have a physical form. They could be integrated into glasses, watches, or some other unimaginable part of our lives.
Kevin rubbed his chin thoughtfully, then looked up and asked.
Uncle, what do you think phones will look like in the future?
Jack chuckled.
That's hard to say, but I believe they'll be even more convenient and intelligent. Maybe someday we won't even need to hold a phone. We'll just use voice, eye movements, or even our thoughts to interact with technology.
Kevin's eyes sparkled with excitement.
If that really happens, I'd love to keep a Nokia 3310 as a collector's item, to show future generations how cool technology was back in our time.
Great idea.
Jack said with an approving nod as he carefully placed the phones back in the cabinet. He patted Kevin's shoulder, his tone warm and affectionate.
Every phone has a story behind it. They don't just represent technological progress. They also capture moments of our lives and emotions. Someday, you'll have your own collection, and when you look back at those old gadgets, you'll realize just how special they are.
At that moment, Sarah poked her head into the kitchen from the backyard and called out, "You two better come outside. We've got more grilled meat ready, and if you don't hurry, there won't be any left." Jack and Kevin exchanged a smile, grabbed a few bottles of soda and beer, and headed back to the yard. Kevin glanced down at the Nokia 3310 in his hand and suddenly said,
Uncle, can I play with this phone for a few days? I want to try out Snake and see if I can beat your record.
Go for it.
Jack laughed, handing him the phone.
But I'm warning you, 2,700 points isn't easy to beat.
With drinks and plenty of stories in tow, they returned to the yard. The smell of barbecue mingled with the warmth of the sun, and children's laughter echoed across the lawn. The family gathering once again filled the afternoon with joy, and the stories of the old phones became a unique and cherished memory of the day. In the distance, clouds drifted slowly across the sky, much like the trajectory of time itself, leaving behind marks that could never be erased. Hello everyone. After sharing the story, let's take a moment to briefly recount the fascinating history of mobile phone development. First, we go back to 1983, the year Motorola introduced the Dynati AC, commonly known as the brick phone. Weighing a hefty 1 kilogram, it allowed people to experience the possibility of making calls anytime, anywhere, for the first time, officially marking the start of the mobile communication era. Next, as mobile networks transitioned into the 2G era, Nokia rose to become a household name. Iconic models like the Nokia 3310 were not only durable, but also made mobile communication more accessible to the general public. The widespread adoption of mobile phones meant that nearly everyone could carry their own phone wherever they went. With the growing need for business functionality, phones entered the era of multi-button designs. BlackBerry, with its full QWERTY keyboard and business features, became the top choice for professionals worldwide. At the time, being able to reply to emails quickly on a phone was considered very trendy. The year 2007 marked a revolutionary turning point. Steve Jobs, CEO of Apple, introduced the world to the smartphone. The launch of the iPhone bid farewell to physical keyboards. Its revolutionary design, centered on full touchscreen functionality, redefined what people thought a phone could be. The phone was no longer just a communication tool. It became a pocket-sized computer. Apple led the way for some time, especially with the introduction of the iPhone 3G and the groundbreaking App Store. By allowing developers to create and distribute their own applications, the App Store sparked an app revolution. People began using their phones for everything from gaming to work, and this diversification of mobile applications fundamentally transformed how we live our lives. Soon after, Google launched the Android operating system, bringing new competition to the field. Brands like HTC and Samsung quickly rose to prominence with their innovation and cost-effectiveness. This marked the beginning of a fiercely competitive era in the smartphone market. As mobile networks advanced from 3G to 4G, the smartphone market entered a warring states period. In addition to Apple's iOS devices, competition among Android brands intensified. Screens became larger, features multiplied, and smartphones became indispensable, all-in-one devices that everyone carried. In recent years, we've witnessed breakthroughs in screen technology, with the advent of curved displays and foldable phones. These innovations have taken design and functionality to new heights, turning phones into not just tools, but also symbols of fashion and cutting-edge technology. Looking back at this incredible journey, we can truly feel how technology has step-by-step transformed our lives. What innovations await us in the future of mobile phones? Let's wait and see.